Well, welcome. Welcome to Diabetes 101. And my name is Moge Zhang, and I am a diabetes dietitian from All You Can Eat Nutrition. So we're going to talk a little bit about what we'll learn from this mini course. I'm going to discuss like what are different type of diabetes, because there's more than one, and what are some causes of different type of diabetes, and what are some symptoms, and how we can manage diabetes with nutrition and medications. And just a little bit about myself. I am a Alaska-based diabetes dietitian, and I live in Anchorage. And I finished my undergrad degree in clinical nutrition from University of California, Davis, and I did my master's degree from Lamar University. And what I like to do for fun? Well, I live in Alaska, so we have a lot of outdoor stuff we can do, and I really enjoy like hiking during the summertime and indoor rock climbing during wintertime. And of course, I'm a dietitian, so I love cooking and I love eating. I can spend like a whole day making a broth and then and then eat the broth within 10 minutes. And I also enjoy playing violin and piano. Little fun fact about me, I am bilingual in English and Mandarin, and my Chinese name means Moscow Princess in Chinese. So if you're interested in learning why is that, you can always ask me about it when we have our sessions. Okay, okay, so let's jump right to it. So what are some types of diabetes that are there? There are three main type of diabetes: type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. And of course, there are also other types of diabetes. There are mature onset diabetes of the young, we call it MODY. And there's latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, we call it LADA. And there's neonatal diabetes, but the most common ones are type 1, type 2, and gestational diabetes. Type 1 diabetes, we think it's an autoimmune disease because the individual's immune system attack it is their own insulin producing cell islet, and with less and less islet in the body, the pancreas start to produce little to no insulins. But it really depends on people, because I know some people who still have good amount of islets exist in their own body, so they still produce a fairly good amount of insulin, so they actually don't require that much of exogenous insulins compared to some people who doesn't have much islets left, and it really depends on exogenous insulins. And insulins, we know, is a hormones that we use to bring down our blood glucose, which is blood sugar. And therefore, individual with type 1 diabetes is really insulin dependent, which means they really need to inject themselves insulins in order to, regulate the blood sugars. So what are some risk factors for getting type 1 diabetes? And we know type 1 diabetes is a autoimmune disease, so a lot of the time it could be genetic or it could be related to family histories. So for example, if you have like an aunt or uncle who have type 1 diabetes, or if you have a sister or brother who have type 1 diabetes, or you have somebody in your family who has another autoimmune disease, for example, like celiac disease, those all increase the risk of getting type 1 diabetes. However, there's still a lot of studies going on about what truly behind type 1 diabetes, so we just simply don't know everything. And it is one big area in the research field that people are still, studying on. So with prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, they're very different from type 1 diabetes. Type 2 diabetes have a lot to do with insulin resistance instead of autoimmune disease. So, for example, look at the screen here. We got a cell. There's a little blue circle, big blue circle here, and then we got a square on the cell that acts like a door. And then we got a lot of like blood sugars that are waiting at the door. They're knocking on the door and say, "Hey, let me in." And then the body will secrete insulin, which acts as a key. They open the door and let glucose or sugar into our muscle cell or brain cell. We use it as energy. However, in type 2 diabetes, your cells don't respond to insulin effectively, and this is called insulin resistance. So which means that you can have a lot of insulin here. However, your cell just still won't open the door for the sugar to let them in. So the pancreas trying to make more insulin to open the door on the cell. So when the blood sugar comes, the door can be opened and the blood sugar can go into the cell so we can use it as energy. However, with insulin resistance, the pancreas, pancreas is trying to make more and more insulins because it's like, why the door is not open no matter how much insulin pancreas produce. So eventually the pancreas get really tired and pancreas function actually decreased. And then with more progressive insulin resistance, the blood glucose rises and eventually it can lead to prediabetes and type 2 diabetes.
So, what are some risk factors for type 2 diabetes? First one is being overweight, especially the central adiposity tissues. If you have like a, we kind of call it like a beer gut. If you have a beer gut, the fat deposit in that middle area greatly increase the risk for insulin resistance. Therefore, it's one of the risk factors that can increase your chance of getting diabetes. And if you're age 45 or older, if you have a family history of type 2 diabetes, so if, for example, if you have mom or dad that have diabetes, or you have sisters or brother who have diabetes, similar family histories, um, being physical inactive, that's another risk factors because um, being physical active, doing exercise can actually help you regulate your blood sugars. So if you're physically inactive, that could be one of the risk factor too. And for women who were pregnant before and might have gestational diabetes, that will increase your risk of getting type 2 diabetes later in life as well. And certain ethnicity groups, such as African American, Hispanic or Latino, American Indian or Alaska Natives, and Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, are all have higher risk of getting diabetes. So, how diabetes impact your health? Diabetes can cause a lot of different complications in life. The one big one is the nerve damage. It can cause like tinglings and numbing sensations on hand and feet. Um, and another big one is cardiovascular disease. With the amount of sugars in our bloodstreams all the time, it can cause like narrowing of the blood vessels, hardening of the arteries, and increase the risk of stroke, heart attack, and hypertension. And with the nerve damage we were talking about, it can actually cause problems in our GI systems too. So I don't know if you guys heard of gastroparesis, but with the nerve damage in the intestine, it causes our digest system slowing down a lot. So with gastroparesis, individual could eat like a really small portion of food and they can get full really, really quick. And the GI motility is much, much slower. So it takes them a very long time to digest food. And another one is kidney disease. So with so much blood sugars in our blood and our kidney constantly have to filtering those extra sugar out, so it causes give a lot of extra pressure and a lot of actual work for kidneys, and that could lead to chronic kidney disease. And when it gets really bad, it can go to end stage kidney disease or kidney failures. Some people have to be on dialysis if they cannot get a kidney transplant. And another one is the slower of wound healings. So when we're talking about the nerve damage on the hands, on the feet, sometimes a lot of people actually, what happened is they don't feel any pain or anything on their foot. And when they walk, if they accidentally like cut their foot, cut their toenails or something like that, and they don't feel the pain, and they didn't really clean it up nicely, and those small cut can really develop into a big cut. And with the sugar and the nerve damage, it's really hard for those wounds to heal well and heal faster, and therefore sometimes it leads to a really big wound, and sometimes it can lead to amputation. The last one is eye damage. So the damage of blood vessels in the eyes, and it can increase risk of cataracts, glaucoma, and blindness. However, some people ask me, well, it's like, so how soon? Do you know how soon are we gonna develop these complications? The truth is, we don't know how soon an individual will develop these complications, because if they have uncontrolled diabetes, because this is all very individualized, and everybody, you know, it just happens differently to everybody. So the best things to do is really, really control your blood sugars, manage your blood sugar well, and that's the first way to delay those complications happen. So what do you want? What do we want our blood sugar looks like? So before a meal, it's called preprandial plasma glucose or fasting blood glucose. It usually means like you wake up in the morning, you didn't eat or drink any, sweet beverages for the past 8 hours, and you want your fasting blood glucose to be between 80 to 130. And if you don't have diabetes, you want your fasting blood glucose to be between 70 to 100 in the morning. And for 1 to 2 hours after beginning a meal, we call it postprandial plasma glucose. We want that to be less than 180. And if you don't have diabetes, you want that to be less than 140. And hemoglobin A1C is a lab that measures how your blood sugar doing over the past 2 to 3 months. And we really want that number to be less than 7% if you have diabetes. If you don't have diabetes, we want that to be less than 5.7%. However, another thing is everything is individualized when it comes to diabetes management, because everybody is different. So 7% can be a really good goal for one person. However, it can be too high for another person or too low for the other person. So like I said, everything is individualized.
So when to check our blood sugars? Well, there's a couple times I think it's really important to check your blood sugars. So the first thing is when you wake up in the morning. So it's always good to check your fasting blood glucose, especially if you're on certain medications. We really want to see they're not going to be a big differences between your fasting blood sugars and your blood sugar from the night before. So fasting blood glucose is usually pretty important to check. And then another one is before each meal, and then before and after exercise. The reason why I say that, because like I mentioned before, the exercise actually change your blood sugars a little bit, but it affects our body differently again. So that's why it's important to check your blood sugars before and after exercise. And before you go to sleep, like I said, the bedtime blood sugars, have to compare the bedtime blood sugars and the fasting blood sugars and see how much difference are those. Well, it's a really good indicator to see if your medication regimen is working or not. And another one is when you experience symptoms of low or high blood sugars, especially when you experience symptoms of low blood sugars. That's a really important time to check your blood sugars. And then if you're missing a meal, check your blood sugars, especially if you're taking medications, because, if you're missing a meal, you're still taking medication, sometimes it can cause low blood sugars. And again, so if you're just diagnosed, if you're totally new with this type 2 diabetes or type 1 diabetes thing, it's definitely beneficial to check your blood sugars more frequently. This allows you to learn, how your body reacts to different food, react to activities, react to medications. So what are some signs of hyperglycemia? Also means high blood sugars. So first is frequent urinations, because we really try to get those blood sugar out of our system. And because of the frequent urinations, you feel like increased thirst and blurred visions, temporarily blurred visions from the high blood sugars, and feeling weak and tired. So what could make your blood sugar rises? So first is you could be eating too much foods or too much carbs, have more than normal amount of carbohydrates foods. And the next is dehydrations, or didn't work out yesterday or today or for a couple of days. If you're being sick, the infection can increase your blood sugars. If you're experiencing stress, or if you give yourself too little insulin, or you forgot to take the medications. So some signs of hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugars, some shakiness, sweating, hunger, fatigue, difficulty concentrating, confusion, slurred speech. When it's getting really serious, it can cause loss of conscience. So what are some reasons that could cause blood sugars to drop? First one is not eating enough food, or you're over exercising, you use a lot of energies. It can cause your blood sugar to go down. If you use too much insulin, some side effects from the medications, or consuming alcohol, that's another one, can also lower your blood sugars. So how to bring up low blood sugars? When you experience low blood sugars, it's really important to get that sugar up immediately to avoid, all those severe symptoms and signs we were talking about from last slide. So we usually use 15-15 rule to correct low blood sugars. So here's what that means. So when your blood sugar is less than 70, we usually consider that low blood sugars. However, again, individualized, different people can feel different things. Some people, when they have when their blood sugar is around 90s, even though that's normal, but for them it's considered low, and they experience signs of low blood sugars as well. So when you have blood sugars less than 70, or you feel the symptoms, check your blood sugar first if you can. If not, but you are still experiencing, those symptoms we're talking about, you just go ahead and correct your blood sugars anyway, just because we don't want to, we don't want the low blood sugars to go really bad and cause you to lose conscious. So eat or drink 15 grams of carbohydrates, and we wait for 15 minutes. If the blood sugar is still less than 70, and you go ahead and have another 15 grams of carbohydrate, you repeat the process. And when it comes to 15 grams of carbohydrates, we want it to be simple carbohydrates, which means something like half cup of juice, half cup of regular soda, 4 pieces of a lifesaver hard candies, 1 glucose gel, 1 glucose tablet. And the reason why we said we want to use 15 grams of simple carbohydrates is because sometimes people told me oh yeah, I just have 2 tablespoons of peanut butter to bring up my blood sugars. Well, we usually recommend to avoid using food such as sandwiches, protein shakes, peanut butters, or any whole food to bring up those blood sugars, because it takes time to digest those food. Especially peanut butters is high in fat and high in protein. It will take a long time to actually digest those food. And we want your blood sugars to go up as fast as possible when you experience low blood sugars. That's why getting something like a juice handy, always in the fridge or just near you, is very important to to have those when you experience low blood sugars. So that's why we call it 15-15 rules. Give yourself 15 grams of carbs, wait for 15 minutes. If it's still low, give yourself another 15 grams of carbs. And I know that when you're experiencing low blood sugars, you just want to like eat whatever you can. We also recommend to avoid doing that just because if you're taking in the amount of food that's uncontrolled, you don't know how much you put in there. In an hour or so or 2 hours later, your blood sugar could be really shoot up to 200 or 300. But if you are just giving yourself 15 grams of juice, it's well controlled. You know exactly how your blood sugar gonna go up, and you can control it. It will be a really nice increase of your blood sugars. So that's why 15-15 rule is a really recommended methods to correct your low blood sugars. So now let's gonna talk about the fun part, the nutrition stuff, right? How we actually eat for diabetes. Well, I usually recommend, I like to use this diabetes plate methods to explain things for everybody, just because, this diabetes plate method is kind of like what the American Diabetes Association says right here. It's a very healthy, balanced diet, and not just for people with diabetes. It's literally for everybody. Like we can all benefit from healthy, balanced meals like this. So what the diabetes plate method is. So it's usually imagine you have a 9 inches plate in front of you, and that's what your meal plate's gonna be, and you want half of that plate to be non-starchy vegetables, and a quarter of that plate to be protein, and a quarter of that plate to be high quality carbohydrates food. And then you can have water or 0-calorie drinks on the side. So you want to fill half of your plate with non-starchy vegetables. And the reason why we want to do that is because non-starchy vegetables are low in simple carbohydrates, and they have non-starchy vegetables usually very high in fiber, which is complex carbohydrates. And those fibers will raise your blood sugar way slower, and it actually can prevent blood sugar spikes. That's why filling up half your plate with non-starchy vegetables is a very good source of fiber, and also help you curb the blood sugars. And some really good examples are like green leafy vegetables. So for example, like spinach, arugula, uh, lettuce, kale, tomato, celery. Those are all very good source of non-starchy vegetables. And make a quarter of your plate protein food. Protein food, that's very similar to fibers too. Protein food takes a longer time to digest. So when you eat protein food with a carbohydrates food, it actually helps delay the digestions. So protein food are usually, however, one thing about protein food is that it does contain, a lot of protein food contain saturated fat, for example, like beef or pork. So it is still important to have a moderate amount of protein intakes. So I recommend to choose like a leaner protein food, such like chicken or fish. Some plant-based protein food are even better sources because they don't have fat in them. So for example, like tofu, like beans, lentils, those are all very good source of proteins. So now we're gonna talk about carbohydrates, carbs. That's like everybody's favorite, right? It's surely my favorite. I eat like rice or noodles almost like 3 times a day, so I cannot live without carbs. Well, carbohydrates is gonna be the food that have the greatest impact on our blood sugars, right? And the portion size of carbohydrates, like again, is individualized. There's a lot of factors that plays into it. So if you're curious about how much carbs you should be eating, you're so welcome to make an appointment with me. I would love to help you figure out how much carbs that you can eat. Depends on what your lifestyle is like, depends on what your medications you're taking and all that. So some examples of carbs, oh man, there's just so many, right? So rice, of course, bread, noodle, potato, popcorn, milk, beans and legumes, sweet potatoes, all the good stuff, right? And like I said, this diabetes plate methods, it's not about deleting certain things, cancel certain food from your diet. It's about you can eat everything. That's why I like to name my private practice All You Can Eat Nutrition, because I believe that you cannot cancel your favorite food out of your plate, and especially carbohydrates. So if you like to know how much carbs you can eat, you're so welcome to make an appointment with me. I'd love to have some sessions with you. Okay, we just covered so much information on diabetes, and I hope you guys learned a lot because those are diabetes 101, so it's all very beginner, informations. And if you just diagnosed with diabetes, I think those are all very helpful informations for you to, start to understanding what is diabetes, what the complications are, um, and there's just so much more to it. There's still a lot more you can learn about diabetes. So, for example, it's still important to mastering and learn how to carbs countings, and and if you have a CGM, like a continuous glucose monitoring device, it's important to learn how to interpret those data and learn how to read nutrition labels, understanding your medications or insulin regimens, and understanding how exercise can impact your blood sugars, because exercise will impact that too, and different kind of exercise impact our blood sugars differently. And and how to set realistic goals, that's another one, because we want to achieve certain things. It's probably better if we have goals, that achievable goals that help us to reach where we want to go, and so much more to learn about diabetes. So there's just so much more about diabetes than this mini course can cover. And one thing I want you guys to do is imagine your A1C less than 7% in 3 months. So no matter where your A1C is at right now, it can be 9%, it can be 11%, but just imagine your A1C is less than 7% in 3 months. A lot of studies show that even lower your A1C by 1% can decrease your mortality rate by 21% if you have diabetes. Just imagine how great is that. So now let me know, how open-minded are you about us working together on your goal to achieve a better A1C? So I am in network with Cigna, Aetna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, and the Medicare. And really one good thing to let you guys know is that a lot of insurance nowadays actually see nutrition therapy as preventative care, which means that you won't even pay co-pays. There's no out-of-pocket pays for a lot of you guys if you see a dietitian. So if you're ready to make an appointment with me, you can go on my website at allyoucaneatnutrition.com and just click the appointment, and it will lead you to the portal to make an appointment with me. And if you're interested to learn more about diabetes and the recipes, you can go on my Instagram account, All You Can Eat Nutrition, to learn more about diabetes. Follow me there. So well, thank you for attending this webinar today. This is Moge from All You Can Eat Nutrition, and hope you guys have a good day today.